Thank you. I've misjudged the weather. Hold on a second. We'll just give you an introduction and then I guess they're chatting, well, yeah, debating, I think, amongst themselves already. Welcome back to Westminster. The morning after the Prime Minister's bid to hold a snap general election was defeated in the Commons.
With us, we have two journalists. They've already started chatting here from opposite ends of the political spectrum, it's fair to say. The Guardian columnist, Owen Jones, and Tom Harwood from the political blog, Guido Fawkes. Morning to both of you.
Both.
Morning.
So, where do we begin today? Where are we? I mean, can we assume on this law to outlaw no deal? Do you think that's it? No deal ain't going to happen, Owen?
What it means is, so the reason this was so important is the fear of the opposition. You can't trust a single word that the Prime Minister says. So on Monday he was saying that he didn't want a general election, which was self-evidently not the case, but the fear of the opposition was of Britain crashing out during a general election campaign. So the opposition all agree, all the different parties, that there has to be a general election, which is now absolutely inevitable and will probably be agreed in the next few days. The fear was that before people get the right to have their say, that we would crash out without a deal, which would be a self-inflicted shock, a temporary period of chaos before we go back to the EU in a weakened position without the British people having a say over it. So all that's now been guaranteed, and it will be passed by the Commons on Monday, is that they can't crash Britain out without a deal before a general election takes place. So next week, without a doubt, almost certainly by Monday or later on, the Commons will vote for a general election. The debate has been about whether that should take place on the 15th of October. Others want it in November, but I think mid-October is what's going to happen.
Tom, let's just pick up on the similar question that John was asking. Talk about, is no deal now off the table? Will it have to come off the table?
Well, that's not the law yet. It looks likely, due to this deal that was struck in the Lords late last night,
really late
that will probably happen on Monday. But nothing's set in stone, and it's 2019, so we can't take anything for granted. But what I would say is that it's quite interesting how Labour have been prevaricating on this position, trying to find any excuse to knock back a general election. They were doing this in the summer as well, when Joe Swinson put down a no-confidence motion. Jeremy Corbyn, even though he said he wanted an election, he refused to back it. And he's been doing the same this week. This is a Labour Party that doesn't really want to go back to the people, and you can really see why with where they're polling, where their leader is being less popular than Trump in this country, Jeremy Corbyn, right now. So it will be interesting. It's quite a strong line that Owen's come out with today. It will be interesting to see if Labour follow through with that on Monday, because I think the government's not confident that they will.
Well, again, the only person who said they don't want a general election is the Prime Minister himself, and that was all of 3 days ago. So the issue now...
Can I just... Sorry to interrupt you there. Just for people who are watching at home, and again, go back to what you've said, but just explain it, if you would, for people watching. Jeremy Corbyn, we've seen him over and go, I want a general election. So when he's got the vote, some people might not understand why, you know, it seems strange, doesn't it?
Because they want to rule no deal out during a general election campaign. So the danger is that we will dissolve Parliament. That's what's going to happen. There is definitely going to be a general election. It will almost certainly happen in the middle of October. But nobody trusts Boris Johnson not to rule out no deal during a general election campaign. There will be people watching us who want no deal. They want us to crash out without a deal, which would be a very temporary state, which would, I would argue, hit working class communities. But the British people have to have a say first about whether they want that to happen, and that's what a general election would ensure. So the opposition, all opposition parties want a general election. The only person who said he didn't want a general election was the Prime Minister 3 days ago. But the issue now is, you know, will the people have that say? And the reason people don't trust Boris Johnson is he's a man sacked twice for dishonesty. He said he wasn't going to prorogue Parliament. He did. We know now who's plotting that two weeks before it happened. And he said he didn't want a general election.
A lot of conspiracy from the Labour Party. If Boris Johnson wanted to take us out with no deal without Parliament's say-so, he could have prorogued right over that end of October deadline. He chose not to. He chose to allow the Commons to sit so this can be debated. It's a total conspiracy that he'd call an election and then change the date of the election in the middle of the election. This is Labour trying to avoid an election and making up any excuse to avoid it.
Do you think the public, the people out there watching this morning, do you think they really want an election?
I don't think anyone really wants an election. Ideally, we would have left the EU in March and got back onto the domestic agenda that we all want to talk about. But ultimately, it looks like this Parliament is so dysfunctional. It's the worst Parliament, the most rotten Parliament that we've had for hundreds of years in this country. It's time that it comes to an end. It's time that actually, I think this is something Owen and I will agree on, MPs that have left their respective parties, stood to be independents, joined new parties, joined the Liberal Democrats, gone back on their manifesto commitments, gone back on their promises to people. It's right that they face the people, and it's right that this Parliament that looks very different to actually the promises that politicians gave to the people in the election, it's right that that's dissolved.
So if he's going to accuse the Labour Party, the other opposition parties of conspiracy theories, fine, don't listen to them. Listen instead to 21 members of the Conservative Party who've been purged from their own party, some who were members going back decades, some have been until a few weeks ago in the Cabinet. They did not trust a single word Boris Johnson said. These are people who've known him in politics for decades, and the reason they don't trust him at his word is he's been sacked twice for dishonesty. He said 3 days ago he didn't want a general election.
This is why,
just quickly, why it's important to have it in law, to have it in legislation, so he can't crash Britain out without a general election, which has to take place.
Thank you both very much, and we will be speaking to one of those MPs. You say that's what they think. We'll ask them exactly that. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning, and I'll agree to let you go. OK? Can we agree on that? OK. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
It's 6:55. It's time to check in with the breakfast teams around the UK. See you in a sec.